Games of days past we tend to forget about, but there's certain ones that make sense to go back to. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx, let's talk about those. Here's 10 single-player games to return to in 2024. Starting off with number 10, it's Days Gone. Now, I was going to start this off with a eulogy for the late, great Bend Studios, the guys behind this game, but that actually is a little premature. They're still around, maybe on life support, but they're still alive and apparently working on a live service AAA game set in a new universe. Good luck with that, guys, but I would prefer we just got Days Gone 2. The original didn't get great reviews back in 2019, and it was mostly greeted with a shrug by Sony fans. But in the past few years, its overall reputation has shifted from generally negative to surprisingly positive. I mean, look at the Steam reviews. It's very positive. The thing about Days Gone is it's one of those games that it's an easy punching bag for critics. It's an untested IP without a built-in fan base. It's not one of Sony's main franchises. It's not coming from a main Sony studio. So a lot of people, reviewers and fans alike, just didn't give it the time of day. It didn't launch in the best condition either. It was pretty buggy at first, but that's way less of an issue now. The thing about Days Gone is it just doesn't make the best first impression. It comes off like a very generic zombie game in its opening hours. The production values, I mean, they're excellent right from the start, but it takes a while to get moving. It's not the best at the beginning of this game. It gets way more interesting and exciting in the back half. I mean, you don't even engage with one of the central mechanics of the game, the zombie hordes, until you're about a dozen hours in. That's pretty deep into the game to hide the main event. So if you played this game back when it came out, but you gave up on it due to bugs or just didn't care because the story isn't like that involved, now's a good time to come back to it, because this is a game that really does get better as it goes along. It's one of those open world games that I've always had a soft spot for, but it's really nice to see the general consensus change on this one to something more positive. At number 9 is Quantum Break from 2016. I guess people just weren't ready for what Remedy was doing. I'll be fair here, though. I'm not sure Remedy was entirely ready for what they were doing with this weird-ass game. In 2024, we're in the middle of the Remedy revolution. Control was a massive, groundbreaking hit, and Alan Wake 2 is perhaps the pinnacle of the style they've been working on for quite a while now. So everyone's really aware of what's up, but in 2016, they were just another developer making a launch title for Xbox One, and the game they made left people pretty confused. It's a narrative-focused action game with time powers that also had these long live-action episodes everyone would play between chapters. It's ambitious. It tried to meld Netflix-style television with a video game, and there's some great ideas like how certain things you do in the game affect a TV show, but it kind of just amounted to an action game where you periodically had to completely stop and watch a really long cutscene. It is fun to see Remedy regulars show up for the first time, though. Critically, a lot of the characters actually connect to Alan Wake 2. Now, you could argue that there are rights issues, or you could argue that they're alternate world versions, but Mr. Hatch, Mr. Door,
Our universe. We're just a speck of light floating in an endless ocean of darkness. Every story finds its writer. Wake has a bloody knife in his light of the flashlight. He smiles a wicked smile. He lies enough with blood on his face, eyes staring.
The parts where you actually get to use time powers are a lot of fun, too. It's definitely lesser than either Control or Alan Wake 2, which are both just fully realized powerhouse games. And they managed to combine video games and live action much more seamlessly. Quantum Break is a flawed game for sure, and the length of the cutscenes would make even Kojima envious. But it's Remedy, and it's got some of the great set pieces that you'd expect in a Remedy game. And some of the cliffhangers might actually get resolved in the future, even if an actual sequel is unlikely. There's just obviously connections with the quote-unquote real Remedy connected universe here. Also, this game's on sale all the time on Steam, too. And you can skip the live action parts if you want. You have my permission. Just don't tell anybody I said that, right? Okay? At number 8 is Warhammer 40k Space Marine from 2011. It's 2024, and somehow Warhammer 40k is bigger than it's ever been. The games are all over Steam. They took over Call of Duty. Amazon's going all in on that Warhammer TV show. So when an actual sequel of this game is coming out in late 2024, there's just no better time to return to Relic's original Warhammer 40k action game. Remember when people used to accuse this of being a Gears of War ripoff? Seriously, that was a common complaint back in 2011. It just goes to show how mainstream attention wasn't quite there yet. What makes this game great is that it actually isn't like Gears at all. It's an Xbox 360 game that's not a cover shooter. It's actually more of a beat-em-up shooter hybrid, and it's a lot of fun to go back to today. What makes it work is this really chunky and powerful combat that feels just really tactile in a way few games have managed to do. Your Space Marine is an absolute killing machine, while still feeling really heavy, but it's not limiting. It's really satisfying. Obviously, the story is generic Warhammer 40k stuff, and the actual environmental design leaves plenty to be desired, but the action in the game's core, it's excellent. And this game smartly doesn't overextend its welcome. Only takes about 5 or so hours to beat, but they constantly mix things up with new weapons and enemy types, so the game manages to leave you wanting more. At number 7 is Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen from 2013. Post Dragon's Dogma 2, it might be a little dragging out, but even taking that into account, I think there's enough about the original game, and especially the updated re-release Dark Arisen, that make it worth coming back to. The fact is, there's nothing quite like these games out there. Dragon's Dogma is a game that's sort of a lot of things, but not exactly anything. There's some Skyrim, some Monster Hunter, some Dead Rising, whole lot more in there, and while it's not for everybody, there's definitely some fun to be had. If you're the type who wants to play the second game but can't because of lack of console and PC that's beefy enough for the sequel, and at the moment the PC really needs some beef, just try playing the first one. It's cheap, it runs well on most PCs, and honestly, it's more feature complete than the sequel is at this point. It's mostly because Dark Arisen has the addition of Bitterblack Island, a late game dungeon full of dangerous monsters and high powered loot. It's probably my favorite thing in the whole series, even if it can be brutally difficult. If you're just finishing the sequel, then a return to the original can probably wait. These games are pretty similar, and you're liable to get burnt out on it. But for everyone else that's looking for something, this is different enough. It is worth going back to the original to experience it over again. And number 6 is Assassin's Creed Unity from 2014. If you don't love the current direction of the Assassin's Creed games, or just want to experience one of the most impressive pieces of virtual tourism ever made, Unity may be the game for you. When this came out, it was absolutely blasted by critics for bugs, glitches, and performance issues, but more recently the game's gotten a bit of a reevaluation. Some love it, some people still hate it, but generally has a much better reputation now than it did 10 years ago. Unity was the last great hurrah of the old school Assassin's Creed formula. It's set in an immaculately detailed version of Paris, and it lacks a lot of the bloat later Assassin's Creed games have. And in 2024, this game is in way better of a state than it was in the original release. Still needs some work here and there on PC. Certain things don't look great using the standard settings, but with some tinkering, it can look absolutely stunning even now. The lighting is still some of the best in the business. They were only able to make it look this good by using baked-in lighting. There is no day-night cycle, but the results speak for themselves, and the city streets have never looked more accurate than they did in this game. The actual story isn't great, and the history is pretty spotty even for an Assassin's Creed game, but Paris may be the best looking city they've ever made. The detail is just astounding. The actual main sneaking missions are also really well done and still hold up very well. It is a flawed game. The controls can be a little wonky, and the enemy AI ratchets between brilliant and brain dead in an instant. But I have a lot of respect for this one, especially if you're sick of every Assassin's Creed game taking 100 hours to finish. It will feel like a breath of fresh air. And number 5 is Spider-Man Web of Shadows. You played Spider-Man 2 but still craving some symbiote action? Well, you really can't go wrong with Web of Shadows, a 2008 open-world action game that has some of the most fun combat systems ever made for a Spider-Man game. After playing through Insomniac's stunning recreation of New York, Shaba Games' Threadbare City is going to look like total garbage. Like, the visuals were pretty outdated even back in 2010, but that's not why you want to come back to this game. There's a lot to like here. Being able to switch between regular and symbiote suit Spider-Man on the fly is a great mechanic because both have different complete move sets. With the right hands, you can pull off some amazing combat stunts in this game, build up crazy combos, like it's super entertaining. And it doesn't waste any time. It gets to the good stuff with non-stop action gameplay and boss battles that constantly propel the story forward. Production values are not great. Like Red Dead Redemption came out the same year, and compare these things. Well, you get the point, right? It runs well enough, though, and it's a lot of fun to play. Some even prefer it to the Insomniac games. They're absolutely nuts, obviously, but Web of Shadows is still, it's a banger. It's great. If you've never played this one before, I will say Peter Parker is the whiniest he's ever been in any media at all.
Where's Cage and his search party? Who? The civilian volunteers! Pretty redhead, arm and a cast! You are no help!
That APC! We got vehicles inbound!
MJ!
But if you get past his screeching voice acting, you've gotten through the worst of it. At number 4 is Deus Ex Mankind Divided. Well, with the rug pulled out from under us, we might as well go back to the classics. The ongoing fallout from the whole Embracer Group debacle may have robbed us of an actual Deus Ex sequel, but it gives us time to go back and appreciate what we had. The thing about Mankind Divided is it got a lot of complaints back in 2016, and they're all pretty valid still. It really does feel like you're playing half a game. It's a good half a game, though. The whole cyborg equals racism thing isn't handled super well. Story never really gets a chance to go anywhere, and it's way too short. But as the years go by and people tend to revisit these types of things, it's harder to focus on the negative and much easier to focus on the positives. Like, for instance, the atmosphere, which is beyond top-notch here. The hub city of Prague is still stunning even now, and the amount of little secrets and side quests hidden in this area rival the best immersive sims out there. The reality is that if you're an immersive sim fan, it's pretty slim pickings out there. It's a genre that's never really caught on, no matter how many studios have tried, and in my opinion, succeeded with the formula. So you kind of just have to take what you can get, and that's the frustrating thing about Mankind Divided. All the pieces are there to make a truly legendary game, but so much of it was cut, we're left with it's a good game. A very good game, in fact. Sometimes games like that are the best to come back to. Also, you can come back to a flawed game with fresh eyes, and understanding there will be some disappointing stuff, it's easy to just focus on the good stuff. And Mankind Divided has a lot of good going on. And number 3 is Divinity Original Sin 2. If you finished Baldur's Gate 3 and you're looking for a new CRPG to obsess over unhealthily, here, Divinity Original Sin 2, that's where to go. It's not D&D, and your party members aren't quite as memorable as the ones in Baldur's Gate 3, but the systematic world is as intriguing to explore as Larian's later game. It's really fun to see how many ideas they were experimenting with here. A lot of them got refined and included in Baldur's Gate 3, which, Original Sin 2 is a massive RPG. It's got complex and challenging turn-based combat.
Abandon your quest or destroy the world!
A really dense world filled with secrets and surprises. It's basically the proto Baldur's Gate 3 in every possible way, and it shows really why this was the right developer to go with. But it even has a controversial city area that's the final act of the game. I've played a lot of other RPGs, but nobody quite makes them the same as Larian. Like, they really let you embrace the chaos and break their games wide open in a way that few other devs allow. And that's a big part of the reason I love these games. Maybe you bounced off this one back in the day, but got into Baldur's Gate 3, and now might be a good time to go back and give this one another shot. Now that you've got some experience with how these devs do things, it might click. At number 2 is The Last Guardian. With no major official Sony games coming in 2024 that we're aware of yet, now's the time to go back and give some appreciation to the ones we lost along the way. Sony was a publisher that used to be on the cutting edge. They would put out all kinds of weird, wonderful things under their banner. Not all these games worked, but one of the most consistently great studios under their umbrella was Japan Studio. These were the guys behind some of the most memorable PlayStation brands like Ape Escape, Legend of Dragoon, Everybody's Golf, Ico, Siren, the list goes on. If there is a Sony exclusive that has some kind of cult following, there's a good chance they had something to do with it. Just to be clear, they were more of a division than a team. They had multiple groups working under one umbrella, and one was Team Ico, who actually didn't survive long enough to work on The Last Guardian, which, yes, is getting confusing. The history maybe isn't the most important part here, but The Last Guardian is quite good. You should go back and play it. That's what I'm trying to say here. Ico and the Shadow of the Colossus, they're obvious classics, but The Last Guardian's a little more contentious. Some people love the mystery, the creature, and the more ponderous atmosphere, while others are trying to guide Trico to nothing but frustration. Found it very miserable. That's, might I add, what's gonna make or break your enjoyment here. If you're willing to work with vague controls, I feel like in 2024, people are a little more accepting of friction mechanics in games. Like, they're willing to accept design that's actively working against you. So, in general, I think The Last Guardian might work a little better now, especially on PS4 Pro or PS5 with a more stable frame rate. The thing about this game is you never really directly control the creature. All you can do is give it vague commands that it may or may not follow. This can be frustrating to play, to put it mildly, especially at first when you're still getting the hang of things. There is for sure a learning curve here, but it does eventually get easier if you try to figure it out. If you're not, just go play Shadow of the Colossus. That game's awesome too. And finally, at number 1 is Alpha Protocol, the cult classic spy RPG that got pulled from Steam back in 2019. I, along with most people, assumed that was the end, so you can imagine our collective surprise in 2024 when GOG started selling the game on their storefront. And with all the licensed music intact, they even throw in some improvements that make the game play nice with modern PCs. That doesn't mean it's fixed or anything. It's still a janky mess, but that's part of the fun. Everything negative said about this game back in 2010, still valid. It is far from perfect, but it's such a unique and interesting experiment that it's easy to overlook all the bad stuff. The controls are stiff, the stealth is janky, many powers are completely broken, and the game, well, it looked dated back when it came out, does not hold up today, but it does deserve another shot. Partly because we don't see a game like Alpha Protocol get delisted and put back up again at some point, but also it's a really interesting game. People complain about games not being reactive enough, but this is like a big exception to that. The most impressive thing about this game is how much can change from one playthrough to the next. And I'm not talking about the ending. I mean, if certain characters live or die, how certain missions will play out, how characters talk to you, can all be super different depending on your choices. And that makes Alpha Protocol one of the most replayable RPGs ever. The only way to really appreciate it is to play the game through more than once to really see the differences. And at least it's short. It uses the Mass Effect model of progression where the story's split into a series of missions, and that's a format I wish more RPGs would use because it keeps the story moving. There's no tedious busy work exploring a barren open world. You just get straight to the good stuff. In this game's case, the good stuff is basically conversations, but they're really well done, even compared to certain games now. The rest of the game can be really divisive. It's not necessarily for everyone, but for people willing to overlook the game's weaker elements, there's a lot of good to be had here. I do have some bonuses for you. Spec Ops: The Line, for instance. In 2024, as the years go by, it's easier and easier to respect what this game was trying to do, even if you actually like it or not. Ignoring the satirical elements, it is a competent shooter with some amazing environments and an excellent voice cast. Like, it deserves to be remembered, if only for doing something very different. Getting it is a little tough, though. It's delisted from all major storefronts, so you gotta either buy a key off a gray market or get a 360 copy, which is pretty expensive, actually. And then there's finally Watch Dogs from 2014, another Ubisoft open world that it's getting a lot more love online nowadays. It wasn't exactly hated when it came out, but it wasn't loved either. I think this is partly due to the expectations that were set for this game, which kind of weren't possible to live up to at the time. And this game has a lot going for it that holds up really well, actually, in 2024, especially if you use some mods people have made to keep the game alive. There's a surprisingly large community still working on this game with updates and improvement. Clearly, the game struck a nerve and keeps people coming back for more. Pretty not bad for a game everyone was calling forgettable back in 2014, because clearly people have not forgotten it. And that's all for today. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. Best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription, so click subscribe. Don't forget to enable notifications, and as always, thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at Falcon the Hero. We'll see you next time right here on GameRanx.